Welcome back. 9:36 on the Zone. TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Leah Musgrave in the driver's seat this morning, hanging out with you until 11 o'clock. And it's time right now for Around College Football presented by Milliken Reserve, a South College Station community connecting families to nature and each other, a community built on community. Visit their website, millikenreserve.com. And with that, we go out to the West Coast on the 12th Man Technology video hotline, and we're going to check in with Aaron Torres of Fox Sports Radio and the ever-popular Aaron Torres podcast. Aaron, happy Thursday. Good morning.
Leah, let me just say, when you got to get up this early, it's nice to finally be dealing with a professional. I mean, I don't know what Gabe's doing, what he's up to, but I hope you're enjoying the week. And, it's just nice to deal with a real professional for a change. It really is.
You know, it's funny you say that because I come on the airwaves and our listeners are like, oh, man, there's no Gabe. And then our guests come on the show and they're like, oh, man, there's no Gabe this morning. It's amazing, isn't it?
Ooh, load off my schedule. Yeah, no, it makes my Thursday a lot better to I'm kidding. I love Gabe. I don't know what he's doing. I hope he's enjoying his time off. I hope you're enjoying taking over the driver's seat here.
Yeah, you know what? It is an ever-popular Gabe-cation, but hey, always happy to be here filling in.
Gabe-cation, I like that.
Gabe-cation. Oh, it is a very popular term in this office.
AT's famous for coining my favorite thing, that Gabe takes more vacations than a Kardashian.
That's right. I did say that one year.
That was one of my favorites.
I said something to that effect. I couldn't remember exactly what the quote was, but
there you go. AT, let's drive right in here. A&M went over Mississippi State in Stark Vegas over the weekend. Not the cleanest, but I think the game was a little bit more lopsided than the score would suggest. What's the good, the bad, the ugly? What are your takeaways here?
Yeah, I think the first thing, like you said, Lee, I mean, I think if you look at the final score, it's an impressive win. It's a quality win, but maybe something that, people were expecting a little bit more of, one-sided performance. But if you watch the game, it was obviously a convincing Aggies win. And, I think the thing that stood out to me, Leah, was that this was a place that you could have a hold up or a trip up because, listen, Mississippi State, their backs against the wall. They're coming off 2 straight losses. That offense has been embarrassing dating back to the LSU game in week 1. But then A&M coming off the biggest win in the Jimbo Fisher era. Now you got to go on the road. You're playing an unranked team. And I just like the professionalism that came from Texas A&M. It wasn't pretty. But there was, you look at the point spread in Vegas, it was about a touchdown or so by kickoff. And I'm just sitting there saying, does Vegas think that Texas A&M is going to have a letdown? So when you're coming off a huge potential program-changing win, you take the wins on the road wherever you can get them. And A&M improved to 3-1 last week.
Yeah, and like you said, Aaron, one of the biggest wins in the Jimbo Fisher era, so we don't want to overreact to that. And we also don't want to overreact to the bad, which was week 1 against Vanderbilt and then week 2 against Alabama. And it seems like the key with the Aggies here is consistency. And so my question for you, through 4 weeks, I mean, what do you know that you know about Texas A&M right now?
Well, to me, I think that what I've learned, listen, I think it's easy to overreact to the Alabama game. And listen, I get it, right? When you hire Jimbo Fisher, the expectation is that at some point in the not too distant future, you'll be able to compete with Alabama. I totally get that. But as we saw with the Georgia game last week in Alabama, I think it's easy to see that maybe even still after all these years, that Alabama is on another level than everybody else in the SEC. And it's not what you want to hear if you're an Aggies fan. Guess what? It's not what you want to hear if you're a Georgia fan, if you're an LSU fan, if you're a Tennessee fan, whatever. That might just be the reality. And so what I think that I know about A&M through 4 games is that in the second half against Florida, they established who they are, and that is their ability to run the ball between the tackles. That continued with the Mississippi State game, and I think that's so important, right? 1, just having an identity, who you are, but 2, as you get into later in the season, when the weather's not as good, you're dealing with rain, you're dealing with cold, you want to be able to establish the run the ball between the tackles, and that is exactly what A&M is doing. They're controlling the line of scrimmage, and it's been really impressive about the last 3 halves dating back to halftime of that Florida game.
Aaron, bye week for the Aggies now, so kind of a 2-parter here. What's the biggest thing that you think needs to be cleaned up with Texas A&M? And then Arkansas also has a bye, also has some momentum rolling. Who kind of gets the advantage here heading into Kyle Field next Saturday?
Well, I think advantage, believe it or not, is to A&M, because I think Arkansas, when you are the hottest story in college football right now, and I think outside of maybe the return of the Big Ten, Arkansas is. I mean, you guys know the history. You guys, your rivalry with them, if you even want to call it a rivalry, because it's been so one-sided. You know what that program has been through, really just the last 2-3 years with the Chad Morris stuff, dating back to the Brett Bielema stuff. When you have that momentum, when you're playing so well, you want to keep playing. You don't want a week off where everybody's patting you on the back. Maybe you're going home. Maybe you're spending time with your family. You're spending time with your high school friends. You just want to keep that momentum going. So I think that for the Aggies, I actually think it's advantage A&M because of the fact that, like you just said, there are still things to clean up, and you get to do it, and there's not as many people patting you on the back after a win against Mississippi State as there would have been a week ago after that Florida win. So to me, I think it's still the passing game. I think it's still Kellen Mond. I think he's been better. I've been critical of him on this show, needs more of a vertical passing game. I understand he lost his best wide receiver before the season. Then obviously Caleb Chapman, unfortunately last week, he lost him as well. So can he get, just reestablish himself with some of the younger wide receivers? I think that's going to be an ongoing theme throughout this season.
Aaron Torres with us, Fox Sports Radio on the 12th Man Technology video hotline. Aaron, a crazy weekend in college football. Arkansas, Ole Miss, Georgia, Alabama, Nick Saban coaching on the sidelines. What did you learn from this weekend in college football other than Alabama is good?
Well, I think that really is the biggest thing, honestly, is that it's Alabama and Clemson again. And maybe Ohio State comes into that party. Maybe Notre Dame eventually gets there, although I didn't see it last weekend. Heck, maybe A&M wins out and they put themselves in that conversation late in the season. And I think if we've learned anything about A&M, it's that maybe I don't even think it's a debate. They've played the two toughest teams on their schedule. Can they take care of games against Auburn, LSU, Tennessee that all of a sudden feel a lot more winnable than they were maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago? So I think what I've learned is that with Bama, what happened with A&M, again, I get it. You're paying Jimbo Fisher a lot of money. I'm not making excuses for him. But they are again on another level. And again, that offense, it wasn't just Mac Jones tearing up an A&M defense that stinks. Mac Jones is doing this to everybody. He did it to a really good Georgia defense last year as well. And so with Clemson and Bama, I think what I learned really with Bama is you need that balance of an offense that can move the ball and a defense that can at least get a couple stops, because you're just not beating this team 17-10. And I think from the Georgia perspective, I also learned different year, same story. I'm a little bit sympathetic to Georgia. They thought they had the quarterback in Jamie Newman. He opts out before the season. But right now they look like the same Georgia team that if they can't beat you, what I just said, 17-10, 14-7, 17-7, they're not going to beat you. They're a really good team that isn't on that upper tier.
Something I've been saying for the last week or so is that SEC football this year is just belligerently intoxicated. And I kind of love it, but I would love to get your analysis of this, because the SEC seems to be moving away from this philosophy of we're going to run the ball and we're going to play good defense. And they're not necessarily playing good defense this year across the board. I remember when, teams had to fight for a yard, let alone 600 to get a win. I'm curious, what is your analysis of the way that teams are competing in 2020 and just installing these high-powered offenses?
Yeah, it was something I mentioned on my show a few weeks ago. If you think about all of the people in college football right now, and specifically in the SEC, who are considered offensive innovators, it's kind of staggering, right? Jimbo Fisher would fit that category. Lane Kiffin would fit that category. Mike Leach would fit that category. Steve Sarkisian, the offensive coordinator at Alabama, would fit that category. Dan Mullen would fit that category. And so, listen, are all of them at the top of their game? Obviously not. We know Mike Leach. It's going to be an uphill battle for him and for this team this season. Whatever. Sark, is he kind of inheriting what Lane Kiffin already built at Alabama? Of course. But that is, I think it's a big story nationally as well, Leah, and credit to you for, by the way, Gus Malzahn in theory probably fits that category too, although I don't think any Auburn fan would say that at that exact moment. But, I think it's a credit to you for kind of jumping on that narrative early, because I think it's 100% accurate. And I think it's a theme in the NFL. I think it's a theme in college football outside of the SEC. We all love, defense and physical battles and all that stuff. But I mean, if you look, whether it's the NFL, whether it's Ohio State that now has a first-round caliber quarterback, when for years the Big Ten was 3 yards in a cloud of dust, the SEC with Mac Jones, the SEC with Kyle Trask, whatever it is, I think this is just where football is going. I don't know if it ever gets back more of an offense-defense balance, but I think to win at any level, but now specifically at the college level, with a Trevor Lawrence, a Justin Fields, a Mac Jones, and these high-powered offenses, you got to be able to go score for score in certain games. And the days of, I've said it 100 times just in this interview, but the days of the 14-7, 7-6, whatever, I think those days are long gone, at least at the highest level.
Yeah, and you mentioned Ohio State, the Big Ten returning to action tomorrow. How do you think that the return of the Big Ten is going to affect the overall landscape of college football from here on out?
I'll tell you, I just posted my newest podcast. I had a friend of TexAgs on, Cole Kublik, a great friend of mine, a great football mind. This is something we talked about, Leah. I think it's the single most fascinating story in college football. And I think there's obviously an A&M tie, and that is, what does the playoff committee do this year with so much imbalance, I guess is the right word, right? Let's say, God forbid, Ohio State, and by the way, we're not past this COVID stuff, right? Florida has had to cancel back-to-back games, postpone, whatever term you want to use. Missouri didn't play last week. LSU didn't play last week. What happens if Ohio State has to cancel a game? What happens if they lose a game? You're sitting here looking at a 6-1 Ohio State team versus a 9-1 A&M team that didn't win their division, or a 10-2 Notre Dame team that lost to Clemson twice. To me, this is going to be the single most fascinating narrative throughout the second half of the college football season, because I do think the committee is going to want to reward the teams that have been doing this since June, since July, haven't canceled practice, have been playing since September. I mean, let's just say hypothetically Notre Dame finishes 9-2 or whatever. Their only losses are to Clemson. One of the games is really competitive, comes down to a last-second field goal. How do you punish that team that has been playing since September 5th when Ohio State joins the party October 23rd, when Oregon and USC join the party November 7th? I just think it's going to be a fascinating story. I think it's going to be I don't know if it's going to be eye test versus resume, or resume is going to matter more, but I just think it's going to be an interesting story to follow. I don't envy the committee, because I think they're going to have some tough decisions to make, and I think it's going to be impossible to whittle this down to 4 teams and try to figure out, is a team that's played 7 games better than a team that's played 10 or 11? But I do think that's going to be the committee's task going forward.
Real quick, Aaron, because we got the A&M swimming coach waiting in the wings.
Oh.
What's got your attention in college football this weekend?
Big Ten. I'm just excited. It's a quiet week for the SEC. Obviously, there are a couple interesting games, but to me, it's the Big Ten. Does Ohio State look the part of the Clemson Bama? Is there a surprise team that emerges? I'm just excited to have the Big Ten back. As somebody who was fighting for it, and you know this, Leah.
I do know this. You are not telling me anything that I don't already know.
Took a little bit of a victory lap this week. I'm not going to lie, with the Big Ten back.
Absolutely. Aaron Torres, appreciate the time so very much. Hope you have a great Thursday, and excited that the Big Ten is back.
All right. Thank you, Leah. Have a good week. Thank you.